Daniel Cooper shifted in his seat, trying to ignore the curious glances from the student beside him. The creature had 6 eyes arranged in a spiral pattern, and at least 3 of them kept rotating toward Daniel every few minutes. He supposed he couldn't blame them. Humans were rare this far from the core worlds, and Daniel had quickly learned that his 2 eyes' bilateral symmetry and lack of any bioluminescence made him something of an oddity at Kepler Prime University. The classroom itself was a marvel of adaptive design. Seats morphed to accommodate everything from the towering cringe students who needed 12 feet of vertical space to the small aquatic Pelions who attended class in floating spheres of treated water. Daniel sat in a standard bipedal chair, his tablet open and ready, waiting for Professor Velthar to begin the day's lecture. The professor entered through the main archway, their crystalline body refracting the light into dancing rainbows across the walls. Velthar was a crystallix, a species that communicated through light pulses and sound vibrations simultaneously. The classroom's translation system converted their lessons into a language each student could understand. "Welcome, students," Professor Velthar's voice chimed like wind through glass. "Today we continue our study of extinct civilizations. Please open your course materials to Chapter 17. Daniel tapped his tablet, watching as holographic images materialized above the device. His stomach tightened as he saw the blue and green planet rotating slowly in the projection. He knew that world. He knew it better than anyone else in this room possibly could. "This is Earth," Professor Velthar continued, moving to the center of the room where a larger projection appeared. "Once home to a species called humanity. The planet orbited a yellow dwarf star in what was designated the Sol system, located in the outer spiral arm of the Milky Way galaxy. A Vorthian student whose rocky exterior constantly shed small pebbles raised one of their manipulator arms. "Professor, when did Earth die?" "Excellent question, Crandor," Velthar replied. The image zoomed closer to Earth's surface, showing abandoned cities being reclaimed by vegetation. "The extinction event occurred approximately 300 years ago. The exact timeline is difficult to establish because humanity never reached out for galactic assistance." Daniel's jaw clenched. He forced himself to remain quiet, to listen. His parents had warned him this might happen, that the galaxy had its own understanding of Earth's history. They had told him to be careful about revealing his origins too quickly. "The humans were a relatively young species," the professor continued. "They had just begun to achieve spaceflight capability when their civilization collapsed. Atmospheric analysis from our survey mission shows catastrophic environmental damage. Rising temperatures, ocean acidification, massive extinction of other species on their planet. A Pelion student sphere bobbed in their specialized seating area. Did they request aid from the Galactic Council? No. Velthar's crystalline form dimmed slightly, a sign of regret among their species. By the time we had established survey protocols for the region of space, Earth had gone silent. Our first contact teams found a dead world. Cities empty. No electromagnetic transmissions. No life signs of any significant technological civilization." "What about survivors?" another student asked. "This one was a Ythrol, a species that resembled a floating cluster of tentacles surrounded by a membrane of bioluminescent tissue. Extensive surveys were conducted over a 50-year period," Professor Velthar explained. "No human colonies were found in their solar system, no generation ships detected in neighboring space. The conclusion was unanimous among xenobiological experts. Humanity had perished, likely within a single generation, victims of their own inability to maintain planetary equilibrium." Daniel felt his heart pounding. Every word was wrong, yet every word came from someone who genuinely believed they were teaching the truth. He looked around at his classmates, seeing them absorb this information, watching them mark their tablets with notes about the extinct humans of Earth. "This serves as a crucial lesson," the professor continued, their light pulsing with emphasis. "Environmental stewardship is not optional for technological species. The humans had the intelligence to reach space, but lacked the wisdom to preserve their own biosphere. They stand as a warning to all of us. A Sornathi student, insectoid with multiple arms and compound eyes, clicked their mandibles. Were they aggressive? Is that why they destroyed themselves?" "Historical data is limited," Velthar admitted, "but recovered broadcasts suggest they were highly divided. Multiple nation-states, frequent conflicts, no unified planetary government. They spent enormous resources on weapons rather than ecological restoration. A tragic but common pattern among extinct species." Daniel's hand started to rise, then lowered, then rose again. His mind raced. He had come to this university to learn, to experience the wider galaxy his parents' generation had deliberately hidden from. But sitting here, Listening to his entire species being discussed in past tense, treated as a cautionary tale about failure and extinction, was more than he could bear. Professor Veltar noticed his raised hand. "Yes, Daniel? Do you have a question?" Every eye in the room turned toward him. All 63 students from 40 different species focused their attention on the quiet human who sat in the back row. Daniel stood slowly, his legs feeling unsteady. "Professor," he said, his voice surprisingly calm despite the trembling in his hands, "you said there is no life on Earth, that humanity is extinct, that we all died 300 years ago." "That is correct," Velthar confirmed, their crystalline structure tilting slightly in what might have been confusion at Daniel's phrasing. "Then I have a question," Daniel continued. He pulled out his identification card, the one issued by the university itself, the one that clearly listed his species classification. He held it up so the closest students could see. "If there is no life on Earth, if humanity is extinct, if every human died 300 years ago, then what am I?" The silence that followed was absolute. Even the usual ambient sounds of the classroom, the bubbling of the Pelion spheres, the soft crumbling of Vorthian skin, the flutter of Sornathy wings, all stopped. Every student stared at Daniel with whatever sensory organs they possessed. Professor Veltar's crystalline body went completely dark for 3 full seconds. When their light returned, it flickered erratically, color shifting in patterns Daniel had learned indicated extreme confusion or distress. "That is not possible," the professor finally said, their voice losing its usual melodic quality. "You cannot be human. Humans are extinct." "And yet," Daniel said quietly, "here I stand." The 6-eyed student next to him suddenly pushed back their chair, all 6 eyes now locked on Daniel with what looked like fear. Across the room, other students began whispering, their voices creating a cacophony of confused sounds and untranslated phrases. Professor Veltar moved closer, their crystalline form refracting light in sharp, jagged patterns. "Show me your identification, official documentation." Now. Daniel handed over his tablet and identification card. The professor's manipulator appendages grasped them, and for a long moment the only sound was the soft pinging of data being processed. "This says you are from Earth," Velthar whispered, their voice barely audible. "This says you are human. This says your species classification is Homo sapiens. This says you are 26 standard years old, which means you were born 278 years after Earth's extinction event." "Yes," Daniel confirmed simply. An alarm began to sound, soft at first, then growing louder. Daniel realized that Professor Velthar must have triggered some kind of emergency protocol. Within seconds, 2 security officers appeared at the classroom entrance. They were Krenth, towering beings who had to duck through the doorway. "Please come with us," one of them said, their voice professionally neutral but their posture suggesting they were prepared for resistance. Daniel picked up his bag slowly, deliberately non-threatening in his movements. As he walked toward the door, he could feel every eye in the classroom following him. The whispers had grown into excited conversations in dozens of languages. As he passed Professor Velthar, the crystalline being spoke one more time. "If what you say is true, if you are truly human, then everything we know is wrong. Everything." "Yes," Daniel agreed softly. "I suppose it is." The security officers escorted him into the corridor, and the classroom door sealed behind him. Through the transparent panels, he could see his former classmates clustered around Professor Velthar, their voices creating a storm of questions he could no longer hear. Daniel took a deep breath and followed the security officers deeper into the station, wondering if he had just made the biggest mistake of his life, or if he had finally given his species the voice they deserved. The examination room was too bright and too cold. Daniel sat on a platform that had adjusted itself to accommodate his human physiology, though it still felt slightly wrong, as if designed by someone who had never actually seen a human body. Medical scanners hummed around him, their soft blue light passing over his skin in regular intervals. He had been here for 3 hours now, and Dr. Crane had barely spoken, except to ask him to remain still. Dr. Crane was a Peluvian, a species that resembled an oversized amphibian with 4 arms and skin that shifted between deep blue and pale green depending on their mood. Currently, the doctor's skin was a confused pattern of both colors, swirling and mixing as they studied the readouts from their instruments. "This is remarkable," Dr. Crane finally said, their voice a deep rumble that came from somewhere in their chest. "Your genetic structure matches exactly with the samples we have from Earth. Pre-extinction samples, I should clarify. Your DNA is undeniably human." "I could have told you that," Daniel said quietly. "Yes, but you understand we needed to verify," Dr. Crane replied, their skin settling into a calmer blue. In 300 years of galactic exploration, we have never encountered a situation like this. An extinct species appearing alive and well. It defies explanation. The door to the examination room opened, and a tall avian creature entered. They stood nearly 7 feet high, covered in sleek feathers that ranged from deep bronze to bright gold. Their eyes were sharp and intelligent, and they moved with the confident bearing of someone used to command. Daniel recognized the uniform markings. This was the senior officer of the station. "I am Commander Zeph," the avian said, their beak clicking softly as they spoke. "I oversee security and operations for Kepler Prime University Station." "Dr. Crane, your report?" "The subject is definitely human, Commander," Dr. Crane said, gesturing to the holographic displays floating around them. "Age approximately 22 standard years. Perfect health. No genetic abnormalities, no signs of cloning or artificial creation. He is a naturally born human being." Commander Zeph's head tilted in a way that reminded Daniel of birds back on the Wanderer's nature documentaries. That should be impossible. Humans have been extinct for 300 years. "Apparently not, sir," Dr. Ment, Crane said. The commander turned their full attention to Daniel. "Explain yourself. Who are you? Where did you come from, and why are you here?" Daniel took a deep breath. He had rehearsed this conversation in his mind 100 times during the long journey to Kepler Prime, but now that the moment had arrived, the words felt heavy on his tongue. "My name is Daniel Cooper. I was born on a colony ship called the Wanderer. My parents are Richard Cooper and Maria Cooper. I came here to attend university because I wanted to learn about the galaxy beyond our ship." "A colony ship?" Commander Zeph repeated slowly. "From Earth?" "Yes," Daniel confirmed. "The Wanderer left Earth 150 years ago. It's a generation ship, designed for long-term deep space travel. I'm third generation. My grandparents were among the original crew who left Earth." Commander Zeph's feathers ruffled, a sign of agitation. "We have surveyed every system within 500 light-years of Earth. We have checked every possible trajectory. No colony ships were detected, no human settlements found." "Are you telling me that a massive generation ship capable of carrying enough humans to maintain a breeding population has been flying through space for a century and a half and we never detected it?" "The Wanderer was designed to avoid detection," Daniel explained. "Our founders wanted to leave Earth quietly. They didn't want to be stopped or followed. The ship has advanced stealth capabilities and travels through regions of space that most survey ships avoid." "Why?" Dr. Crane asked, their skin rippling with confusion. "Why would humans hide from the rest of the galaxy?" Daniel hesitated. This was the part his parents had worried about most. How to explain the fear and desperation that had driven humanity to flee into darkness? Earth was dying. Our climate had collapsed. The oceans were rising, the atmosphere was becoming toxic, and billions of people were suffering. But instead of asking the Galactic Council for help, Earth's leaders decided to save who they could and leave. "That makes no sense," Commander Zeph said sharply. "The Galactic Council exists specifically to assist species in crisis. We have protocols for environmental restoration, population relocation, technological assistance. Why would humans refuse help?" "Pride," Daniel said simply. "Fear, mistrust. The people who made those decisions 300 years ago didn't know if the galaxy would help or exploit us. They didn't know if we would be seen as equals or as primitives to be managed. So they built 12 ships in secret, loaded them with people, and sent them in different directions into deep space. They chose survival over integration." 12 ships, Dr. Crane whispered. "How many humans are on each ship?" "The Wanderer carries 48,000 people," Daniel said. "The other ships have similar populations, some slightly more, some slightly less. Together, we're somewhere around 600,000 humans, spread across 12 generation ships, traveling through different parts of the galaxy." The number hung in the air like a physical thing. Commander Zeph's feathers had gone completely still, and Dr. Crane's skin had turned a pale, shocked green. 600,000, Commander Zeph said. "Not extinct. Not even endangered. You're telling me that humanity is alive, organized, and has been hiding from us for 3 centuries? "We weren't hiding from you specifically," Daniel said. "The founders didn't know the Galactic Council existed until after they had launched. By then, it was too late to turn back, and honestly, each generation after that had to deal with its own challenges. Keeping the ships running, maintaining our populations, preserving our knowledge and culture. Reaching out to the galaxy became a question for the future. From my generation, apparently. Commander Zeph paced the room, their taloned feet clicking on the floor. This is a first contact situation. Do you understand what that means? You are not a student enrolling in classes. You are an ambassador representing an entire species that we believed was dead. Every government in the galaxy will want to speak with you. Every news service will want to interview you. You have just become the most important person on this station. Daniel felt his chest tighten. I just wanted to go to school. I wanted to study xenobiology and learn about other species. My parents warned me this might happen, but I thought if I just enrolled quietly, maybe I could attend a few classes before anyone noticed. Notice that you're a member of an extinct species? Dr. Crane said, a sound that might have been laughter rumbling from their chest. Daniel, you are the only human most beings in this galaxy have ever seen. There was never any possibility of you going unnoticed. Commander Zeph pulled out a communication device. I need to contact Galactic Council representatives. This is beyond my authority to handle alone. But first, Daniel Cooper, I need proof of what you're claiming. Can you provide coordinates for this Wanderer ship? Can you prove that these other humans exist? Daniel reached into his jacket and pulled out a small data chip. My parents gave me this before I left. It contains our ship's history, our current trajectory, and encoded communication frequencies. They said to only share it if absolutely necessary. I think this qualifies. Commander Zeph took the chip carefully, as if it might explode. If this information is genuine, if your ship exists where you say it does, then I will need to organize a verification mission. We will need to make contact with your people officially. They'll be expecting it, Daniel said. My parents knew that once I revealed myself, you would want proof. The Wanderer's captain is my aunt, Lisa Bennett. She'll verify everything I've told you. Dr. Crane moved closer to Daniel, their forearms gesturing in what seemed like concern. Are you all right? This must be overwhelming for you. Daniel laughed, though it sounded hollow even to his own ears. I just told the entire galaxy that my species isn't dead. I've been scanned and questioned for hours. And I'm probably going to fail my xenobiology class because I was escorted out by security, so no, I'm not entirely all right. You won't fail, Commander Zeph said, their voice surprisingly gentle. Professor Velthar is likely having the most significant revelation of their career. If anything, you've taught them more about xenobiology in 5 minutes than they've learned in years. What happens now? Daniel asked. Commander Zeph's feathers smoothed down, and they met Daniel's eyes directly. Now, we verify your story. We find your ship, we make contact with your people, and then, Daniel Cooper, we figure out how to tell the galaxy that humanity has returned from extinction. Daniel nodded slowly. Through the window of the examination room, he could see the stars outside the station, countless points of light stretching into infinity. Somewhere out there, the Wanderer continued its eternal journey, carrying thousands of humans who had no idea that their existence was about to become known to the entire galaxy. He wondered what they would think. He wondered if they would thank him or curse him for speaking up. Most of all, he wondered if he had just changed the course of human history forever with one simple question in a classroom. 3 weeks had passed since Daniel's revelation in the classroom, and now he stood in the boarding area of the research vessel Swift Current, a sleek ship designed for long-range exploration and diplomatic missions. The vessel was smaller than the massive university station, but it represented the cutting edge of galactic technology. Daniel had spent those 3 weeks in comfortable but isolated quarters, answering endless questions from council representatives while the verification mission was organized. Now, finally, he was going home. Or at least he would lead others to his home. Commander Zeph arrived first, their bronze and gold feathers gleaming under the boarding area lights. They carried a small case of equipment and nodded to Daniel as they passed. Are you ready for this? As ready as I can be, Daniel replied honestly. I've been away from the Wanderer for 8 months. A lot can change in that time. Let us hope your people are as welcoming as you suggest, Commander Zeph said. Next came Professor Velthar, their crystalline form reflecting rainbow patterns across the walls. The professor had been deeply shaken by Daniel's revelation. They had spent hours apologizing to Daniel, explaining how the surveys had been conducted, showing him all the data that had led to the conclusion of human extinction. Daniel didn't blame them. How could he? They had worked with the information they had. Daniel, Professor Velthar's voice chimed softly. I want you to know that regardless of what we find, you have already changed everything. My entire career has been built on studying extinct species. To meet one who is very much alive, it has given me a new perspective on how much we might not know. I'm just one person, Daniel said. Wait until you meet the others. A new figure entered the boarding area, and Daniel immediately felt his instincts go on alert. The being was reptilian, standing about 6 feet tall, with scales that shifted between deep emerald and bright jade. Their eyes were large and expressive, and they wore robes marked with diplomatic insignia. This was a species Daniel had studied but never met in person. "Ambassador Sorn," Commander Zeff said respectfully. "Thank you for joining us on such short notice. When the Galactic Council requests my presence for first contact with a supposedly extinct species, I clear my schedule," Ambassador Sorn replied, their voice smooth and measured. They turned to Daniel, studying him with obvious curiosity. "You must be Daniel Cooper." "I am Ambassador Sorn of the Repthus Diplomatic Corps. I specialize in first contact situations, though I must admit this is my first time making first contact with a species we already cataloged as dead." "Nice to meet you," Daniel said, extending his hand in the human gesture of greeting he had taught several station personnel over the past weeks. Ambassador Sorn looked at the hand for a moment, then carefully grasped it, mimicking the shaking motion Daniel initiated. "Fascinating. Your species uses physical touch as a greeting protocol. Most civilized species avoid such contact with unfamiliar individuals." "Humans are very touch-oriented," Daniel explained. "We hug, shake hands, pat shoulders. It's how we show connection and trust." "I will remember that," Ambassador Sorn said thoughtfully. "These cultural details will be important when we make formal contact with your people." The last member of the team arrived, and Daniel felt a wave of relief. Lieutenant Hayes was human, or at least appeared human at first glance. But Daniel had learned during his briefings that Hayes was actually a shapeshifter, a Morvan who could alter their physical form to match other species. They had chosen to appear human for this mission to make the initial contact less overwhelming for the Wanderer's crew. "Ready when you are, Commander," Lieutenant Hayes said, their voice carrying a slight accent that Daniel couldn't quite place. "Then let us depart," Commander Zeff said. "We have a 5-day journey ahead of us." The Swift Current's interior was designed for comfort during extended missions. Daniel was given a small cabin with a viewport, and he spent the first day of travel simply watching the stars streak past as the ship entered hyperspace. The technology still amazed him. The Wanderer traveled at sub-light speeds, making its journey an endless voyage across normal space. But galactic civilization had mastered faster-than-light travel centuries ago. What would take the Wanderer years to cross, the Swift Current covered in days. On the second day, Ambassador Sorn invited Daniel to the common area for what they called a cultural exchange session. Professor Velthar and Commander Zeff joined them, and Daniel found himself answering questions about human society, traditions, and daily life aboard the Wanderer. "Tell me about your family structure," Ambassador Sorn asked, their scales gleaming in the soft light. "Do humans practice communal child-rearing like the Pelians, or individual family units like the Krinth?" "Individual families mostly," Daniel explained. "Though on the Wanderer, everyone helps raise the children. We don't have much space, so the community is tight. My parents both work in hydroponics, growing food for the ship. My Aunt Lisa, the captain, never had children of her own, but she helped raise me and my cousins." "Hydroponics," Professor Velthar said, their light pulsing with interest. "So you've maintained agricultural capabilities." "That's impressive for a generation ship. Most species rely on synthesized nutrients for long-term space travel." "Humans like real food," Daniel said with a smile. "We have gardens throughout the ship. Vegetables, fruits, even some grain crops. It's not enough to feed everyone completely, so we supplement with synthesized protein, but having real food helps people remember Earth, helps them feel connected to where we came from." Commander Zeff tilted their head. "Do you remember Earth, Daniel?"
"Have you ever seen it?"
"Only in recordings and photographs," Daniel admitted. "My grandparents remembered it. They told stories about blue skies and oceans that stretched to the horizon, about forests where you could walk for days and never see the same tree twice. To me, those stories sound like fairy tales. I've only ever known the Wanderer. Metal walls, recycled air, artificial gravity. That's my Earth." "And yet you left it," Ambassador Sorn observed. "You came to Kepler Prime alone. That must have been frightening." "It was terrifying," Daniel said honestly. "The Wanderer is home, but it's also limiting. We have the same teachers teaching the same lessons that have been taught for 3 generations. We have the same entertainment programs, the same books, the same everything. I wanted to see what else was out there. I wanted to learn things that no other human knew, even if it meant leaving everything familiar behind." The conversation continued late into the night cycle, and Daniel found himself sharing stories he hadn't thought about in years. His first time in the observation deck as a child, seeing the stars without any window frame around them. the annual festivals where the entire ship celebrated the anniversary of their launch from Earth. The quiet moments in the hydroponics gardens where he had helped his parents tend tomato plants and listened to them talk about their hopes for his future. On the fourth day, Lieutenant Hayes invited Daniel to the bridge. "We'll be dropping out of hyperspace in about 12 hours, they explained. "We wanted you here when we arrive at the coordinates you provided. If the Wanderer is there, you'll see it first." Daniel spent that time on the bridge, watching the navigation displays and trying not to let his nervousness show. What if the Wanderer had changed course? What if something had happened to the ship in the 8 months he'd been gone? What if his people rejected the idea of making contact with the galaxy? Commander Zeph seemed to sense his anxiety. "Your people will be cautious," they said quietly. "We're strangers arriving in a ship they've never seen before. But you'll be with us. They'll trust you." "I hope so," Daniel said. Finally, the moment arrived. The swift current dropped out of hyperspace, and the main view screen activated, showing normal space around them. At first, Daniel saw nothing but stars. Then the ship's sensors locked onto something, and the view screen zoomed in. There it was. The Wanderer. The generation ship was enormous, a cylinder nearly 2 miles long and half a mile in diameter. It rotated slowly, creating artificial gravity through centrifugal force. Solar panels extended from its surface like wings, and dozens of smaller structures dotted its hull. To Daniel, it was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. It was home. "That's it," he whispered. "That's the Wanderer." Professor Velthar's crystalline form brightened with excitement. Remarkable. The engineering alone is incredible. To build something that size, to maintain it for 150 years, all while traveling through deep space, "We're being scanned," Lieutenant Hayes announced from the pilot's station. "The Wanderer knows we're here." Commander Zeph stepped forward. "Open a communication channel. Standard first contact protocols." A moment later, a voice came through the ship's speakers. It was female, authoritative, and painfully familiar to Daniel. "Unknown vessel, this is Captain Lisa Bennett of the Generation Ship Wanderer. You are in restricted space. Identify yourself immediately or we will take defensive action." Daniel felt his throat tighten. He stepped toward the communication console. "Aunt Lisa, it's me. It's Daniel. I'm coming home, and I brought some friends who need to meet you." There was a long silence. Then, in a voice that cracked with emotion, his aunt replied, "Danny, is that really you?" "It's really me," Daniel said, tears forming in his eyes. "And Aunt Lisa, we need to talk. Because the galaxy thinks we're all dead, and I think it's time we told them otherwise." Another pause, then Captain Bennett's voice came back, stronger and more controlled. "Permission to dock granted. But Daniel, you have a lot of explaining to do." Ambassador Soren looked at Daniel with something like respect. "Well done, young human. You've just completed the first half of First Contact. Now comes the harder part, convincing your people that rejoining the galaxy is worth the risk." Daniel nodded, watching as the swift current began its approach to the Wanderer's docking bay. Through the view screen he could see the familiar markings on the hull, the sections where he had played as a child, the observation windows where he had stared out at the stars and dreamed of days like this. He was home. And nothing would ever be the same again. The docking bay of the Wanderer was exactly as Daniel remembered it. Stark metal walls, bright overhead lights, and the familiar hum of the ship's systems that he had heard every day of his life until 8 months ago. But now, standing here with 4 alien beings beside him, everything felt different. The bay that had always seemed so large now felt small and confined. The air that had always seemed fresh now tasted recycled and thin. Captain Lisa Bennett stood waiting with a security team of 6 humans, all wearing the dark blue uniforms of the Wanderer's crew. She looked older than Daniel remembered, with new lines around her eyes and more gray in her dark hair. But her posture was still straight, still commanding, and her eyes were as sharp as ever. "Danny," she said, and then she was moving forward, pulling him into a tight embrace. 8 months without a word. "Do you have any idea how worried we were?" "I'm sorry," Daniel said, his voice muffled against her shoulder. "I wanted to contact you, but everything got complicated." Lisa pulled back, keeping her hands on his shoulders, studying his face. Then she looked past him at the alien delegation, and her expression shifted from relief to wariness. "And these are your friends?" "Captain Bennett," Commander Zeph said, stepping forward with careful, non-threatening movements. "I am Commander Zeph of the Galactic Council's Exploration and Contact Division. Thank you for allowing us to dock." Lisa's eyes narrowed. The Galactic Council, the organization that surveyed Earth and declared it abandoned. The organization that cataloged humanity as extinct and never bothered to look for survivors. That is correct, Commander Zeph said without defensiveness, and we are here to understand how and why we were so completely wrong. Ambassador Sorn moved forward, their scales shifting to a calming blue-green. Captain Bennett, I am Ambassador Sorn. I specialize in first contact situations. I want you to know that we mean no harm to you or your people. We are here to learn and, if you're willing, to help. Help! Lisa repeated, her voice flat. Where was that help 300 years ago when Earth was dying? Where was that help when we loaded 50,000 people onto this ship and sent them into the dark with no idea if we would survive? Professor Velthar's crystalline form dimmed respectfully. Captain, I cannot speak to decisions made by the Council 3 centuries ago. I can only tell you that your nephew came to our university, attended a class about extinct civilizations, and taught us that we had made a terrible mistake. We are here because we want to correct that mistake. Lisa looked at Daniel. What did you do, Danny? I asked a question, Daniel said simply. Professor Veltar was teaching about Earth, about how all humans were dead. And I asked them if humans were extinct, then what was I? A small smile tugged at Lisa's lips despite the tension. You always were too smart for your own good. She took a deep breath. All right. You came all this way. Let's talk. But not here in the docking bay. Come to the conference room. And, Commander, Ambassador, Professor, I hope you understand that I need to call a council meeting. This affects every person on this ship. The journey through the Wanderer's corridors was an experience none of the alien visitors would forget. Humans stopped in their tracks staring at the strange beings walking through their home. Children pointed and whispered. Adults pulled out communication devices, clearly spreading word of the visitors. By the time they reached the conference room, Daniel could see crowds gathering in every intersection they passed. The conference room was located near the ship's command center, a practical space with a long table and chairs that could seat 20 people. Within 30 minutes, the room was full. Lisa sat at the head of the table with Daniel beside her. The alien delegation sat on one side, and representatives from the Wanderers' Council filled the remaining seats. There was Marcus Green, the head of engineering, Patricia Cole, who managed hydroponics and food production, Vincent Park, the chief medical officer, and 8 others, all leaders of different departments that kept the Wanderer functioning. Let me start with the most important question, Lisa said, her hands folded on the table. Why did the Galactic Council declare Earth dead without conducting a thorough search for survivors? Commander Zeph met her gaze directly. We conducted 4 separate survey missions to Earth over a 50-year period. Each time we found the same thing. Empty cities, no technological activity, no response to our communication attempts. The atmosphere was damaged but recovering. The conclusion was that humanity had perished in an environmental collapse. And it never occurred to you that people might have left? Marcus Green asked, his voice sharp. That maybe we built ships and escaped? We searched the Sol system extensively, Professor Veltar explained. We found no signs of recent space activity, no ship construction facilities, no debris trails. Earth's moon and Mars showed signs of attempted colonization, but those sites were also abandoned. Because we hid our construction efforts, Patricia Cole said. The ships were built in deep space in the outer asteroid belt. We used stealth technology to avoid detection. We didn't want anyone to know we were leaving. Ambassador Sorn leaned forward, their scales flickering with curiosity.
Why not?
If your planet was dying, why refuse help from the galactic community? Lisa was quiet for a moment, her fingers drumming on the table. Because we were afraid. We had just discovered that we weren't alone in the universe, that there were thousands of species out there, civilizations millions of years older than ours. And we were dying. Our planet was failing because of our own mistakes. We didn't know if the galaxy would see us as equals worth saving, or as primitives who couldn't even manage their own world. There was also the question of cost, Vincent Park added. What would the Council want in return for saving Earth? Our independence? Our resources? Our genetic material? We had no framework for understanding galactic politics. So the leaders at that time made a choice. Save who we could on our own terms. 12 ships, Daniel said, speaking up for the first time since entering the room. I told them about the 12 ships, Aunt Lisa.
About the plan. Lisa nodded slowly. Yes?
12 generation ships, each carrying between 40 and 60,000 people. We launched over a period of 5 years, each ship heading in a different direction, each with enough resources and genetic diversity to restart human civilization if necessary. The Wanderer was the 7th ship to launch. Commander Zeph's feathers ruffled with agitation. Do you still maintain contact with the other ships? We do, Lisa confirmed. Every ship sends out a coded transmission once per standard year. We check in, share information about our status, coordinate our trajectories to avoid crossing paths. As of the last communications cycle, all 12 ships are still operational. Professor Veltar's light pulsed rapidly, a sign of excitement. That means somewhere around 600,000 humans still exist. Your species isn't just surviving. You're thriving in one of the harshest environments possible. We do what we must, Marcus Green said. But it hasn't been easy. We've lost people to accidents, to disease, to the psychological strain of living in a closed environment for generations. Every day is a struggle to maintain the ship's systems, to keep the life support running, to make sure we have enough food and water. We survive, but we don't thrive. We endure. Ambassador Soren's expression softened. And that's why Daniel left. Because enduring isn't enough for the younger generation. They want more. Some of them do, Lisa admitted, looking at her nephew. Danny isn't the first to express interest in the outside world. We've had young people asking for years why we don't try to make contact, why we don't look for habitable planets, why we just keep flying through empty space with no destination. But the Council has always voted to maintain our isolation. Better to be alone and safe than exposed and vulnerable.
Until now, Daniel said quietly.
Lisa sighed. Until now. Because you couldn't keep your mouth shut in a classroom, and now we have a Galactic Council delegation sitting in our conference room, and 600,000 humans are about to learn that we're not alone anymore. Commander Zeph stood, their full height, impressive even in the human-sized room. Captain Bennett, I understand your caution. I understand your fear, but I want you to know that the Galactic Council exists to help species in situations exactly like yours. We can offer you technology to improve your ships. We can help you find habitable worlds where humans can settle. We can provide medical assistance, educational resources, cultural exchange opportunities. You don't have to wander through space alone anymore. And what do you want in return? Lisa asked bluntly. Nothing that you're not willing to give, Ambassador Soren replied. The Council doesn't conquer or exploit. We facilitate cooperation between species. If humanity wants to join the galactic community, you'll be welcomed as equals. If you want to remain isolated, that choice will be respected. But at minimum, we need to update our records. We need to tell the galaxy that humanity survived, that you're out here, that you're still a part of the story of intelligent life in the universe. Lisa looked around the table at her council members. She saw uncertainty in some faces, hope in others, fear in a few. She thought about the 50,000 people living on this ship, about the generations yet to be born, about the choice that would define humanity's future. I need time, she finally said. This isn't a decision I can make alone, and it's not a decision just for the Wanderer. If we're going to rejoin the galaxy, all 12 ships need to be part of that conversation. We've been together in this isolation. We should be together in whatever comes next. How long will it take to contact the other ships? Commander Zeph asked. 6 months to send the messages and receive responses, Marcus Green said. Another 3 months to organize a meeting if all the captains agree. The ships are spread across vast distances. Even with our fastest communication methods, coordination takes time. Then I propose this, Ambassador Soren said. Commander Zeph and I will return to Kepler Prime and report to the Council. Professor Veltar can stay here if you're willing to host them. Let them study your ship, your culture, your people. Let them be a bridge between our civilizations while you organize your meeting with the other ships. And Daniel can choose where he wants to be, with us or with you. All eyes turned to Daniel. He looked at his aunt, at the council members, at the aliens who had become unlikely friends over the past weeks. I want to stay here, he said. I want to help explain everything to my people. And then, when the ships gather, I want to be there. I want to see what we decide together. Lisa reached over and squeezed his hand. Then you'll stay, and we'll contact the other ships. And in 6 months, we'll find out if humanity is ready to stop hiding and start living again. 6 months had passed since the swift current had departed, leaving Professor Velthar aboard the Wanderer as a guest and ambassador. In that time, Daniel had watched his home transform. The crystalline professor had become a fixture in the ship's corridors, attending classes in the education wing, studying the hydroponic systems, learning human languages and customs. The initial fear and suspicion had gradually shifted to curiosity, then to cautious friendship. Children no longer ran from Velthar, but instead asked questions about their world, about the colors that danced through their crystalline body, about what it was like to be made of living crystal. Now Daniel stood in the observation deck of the Wanderer, watching as 11 other massive generation ships slowly moved into formation around them. Each ship was slightly different in design, reflecting the different engineering teams that had built them, but all shared the same basic structure. Long cylinders rotating through space, carrying the last remnants of humanity through the endless dark. It had taken 3 months for all 12 captains to agree to this gathering. Another 2 months for the ships to calculate trajectories and navigate to this neutral point in space, far from any inhabited systems, and now, finally, they were here. 12 generation ships in one place for the first time since they had left Earth 150 years ago. Lisa stood beside Daniel, her hand resting on the railing. "I never thought I'd see this," she said quietly. "All 12 ships together. Our ancestors dreamed of this moment, but I don't think they believed it would actually happen." "They're beautiful," Daniel said, watching the ships move in synchronized patterns, their solar panels catching the light from a distant star, all of them together. This is what humanity looks like now. Not a planet, but a fleet. Professor Velthar approached them, their crystalline form reflecting the lights from the viewports. "Captain Bennett, the Galactic Council delegation has arrived. They're requesting permission to board." Lisa took a deep breath. "Send them to the main assembly hall." The assembly hall was the largest open space on the Wanderer, normally used for community gatherings and celebrations. But today it had been transformed into a meeting chamber. Representatives from all 12 ships had gathered, transported via a small shuttlecraft between the vessels. Nearly 200 humans filled the seats, representing every generation ship in the fleet. Young and old, engineers and farmers, teachers and medical officers, all come together to make a decision that would affect every human alive. At the front of the hall, 12 chairs had been arranged in a semicircle. The captains of the 12 ships sat there, each one bearing the weight of their people's hopes and fears. Lisa was among them, as was an elderly man named Captain Gregory Walsh from the ship called the Horizon, and a middle-aged woman named Captain Yuki Tanaka from the vessel known as the Sanctuary. Daniel sat in the front row with other young people who had been chosen to represent the next generation. Beside him was a girl named Maya from the Horizon, barely 18 years old, and a young man named Kevin from the Sanctuary who couldn't stop staring at everything with wide-eyed wonder. The doors to the assembly hall opened and the Galactic Council delegation entered. Commander Zeph led the way, their bronze and gold feathers gleaming. Ambassador Sorn followed, their scales shifting to a respectful deep blue. Behind them came 3 other beings Daniel recognized from his time at Kepler Prime. A towering Corinth representative, a Pelion in their floating water sphere, and a Vorthian whose rocky exterior scattered small pebbles with each step. But it was the last figure who drew everyone's attention. A holographic projection materialized in the center of the room, showing an elderly being of a species Daniel had never seen before. They appeared almost ethereal, with translucent skin that glowed with soft inner light, and eyes that seemed to contain entire galaxies. "Greetings, humanity," the holographic figure said, their voice resonating through the hall with a warmth that seemed to ease some of the tension. "I am Counselor Praxis of the Elder Convocation. I have lived for 4,000 of your standard years, and I have witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations. But never have I seen anything quite like this. A species that chose isolation over integration, that chose the uncertainty of deep space over the assistance of the galactic community. You fascinate me, and I am honored to be here for this moment." Captain Walsh stood, his movements slow with age, but his voice still strong. "Counselor Praxis, representatives of the Galactic Council, I am Captain Gregory Walsh of the generation ship Horizon. I am 93 years old. I was born on this ship 2 years after it launched from Earth. I have never seen a planet. I have never breathed air that wasn't recycled through mechanical filters. I have spent my entire life in a metal cylinder flying through the void, and I speak for many when I say that I am tired. We are all tired." A murmur of agreement rippled through the assembled humans. Captain Tanaka stood next. "I am Captain Yuki Tanaka of the Sanctuary. I am 67 years old, 3rd generation like Captain Walsh. My grandmother was among the original crew who left Earth. She told me stories of blue skies and green forests, of oceans that stretched beyond sight. She died hoping that someday her descendants would walk on solid ground again. We all carry that hope. The question before us today is whether we trust the galaxy enough to help us fulfill it." Ambassador Sorn stepped forward, their movements graceful and non-threatening. "Captains, people of humanity, I understand your hesitation. Your ancestors made their choice based on fear and uncertainty. But I want to tell you what the galaxy is really like. We are not perfect. We have our conflicts, our disagreements, our political complexities, but we are also a community of thousands of species who have learned to coexist, to share knowledge, to help each other survive and thrive. When a species faces extinction, we do not abandon them. When a civilization needs help, we provide it. The Crinth representative spoke next, their voice deep and resonant. I am Representative Coral. My species nearly went extinct 800 years ago when our sun began to die. The Galactic Council helped us relocate to a new world. They provided the technology and resources we needed to survive. Today, my species numbers in the billions, spread across 3 star systems. We owe our existence to the generosity of the galactic community. The Pellion's water sphere bobbled forward. I am Representative Lissa. My species joined the Council only 200 years ago. We were frightened, unsure if we could trust these strange beings from other worlds. But we took the chance, and it has transformed our civilization. We have access to medical technology that has doubled our lifespan. We have educational exchanges that have enriched our culture. We have found friends and allies among species we never could have imagined. Lisa stood, and the hall fell silent. These are beautiful words, inspiring stories, but I need to ask the hard question. What does the Galactic Council actually want from us? What will it cost humanity to accept your help? Counselor Praxis's holographic form seemed to intensify, drawing all attention. Captain Bennett, the Council asks only 3 things. First, that you allow us to help you find habitable worlds where humans can settle if you choose. Second, that you share your knowledge and experiences with the galactic community so that others might learn from your journey. And third, that you contribute to the Council in whatever ways match your abilities and interests, whether that's scientific research, artistic exchange, or simply being part of the ongoing conversation about how we all survive together in this universe. And if we refuse? Captain Walsh asked. If we choose to remain isolated, then you remain isolated, Commander Zeph said simply. We will update our records to show that humanity survives. We will establish a communication protocol so you can contact us if you ever change your minds, but we will not force you to join us. That choice must be yours, freely given. Daniel felt his heart pounding. This was the moment. Everything led to this. A young woman stood from the crowd, and Daniel recognized her as someone from the ship called the Pioneer. I'm Rachel. I'm 20 years old. I've never known anything but this ship, and I'm so tired of recycled everything. Recycled air, recycled water, recycled dreams. I want to see a real sunrise. I want to feel rain on my face. I want my children to grow up on solid ground, not floating through space forever. Please, let's take this chance. An older man stood next. I'm George from the Voyager. I'm 78. I remember when we used to celebrate Earth Day, when we'd watch old videos of our home planet. Every year, fewer people attend. Every year, Earth becomes more like a myth and less like a real place we came from. If we don't make contact now, in another generation or 2, we'll forget we ever had a home. We'll just be wanderers forever, and our children won't even know what we lost. One by one, people stood and spoke. Some expressed fear, worried about diseases they had no immunity to, about being overwhelmed by advanced civilizations, about losing their human identity in the vastness of the galaxy. Others spoke with hope, dreaming of planets and opportunities and the chance to finally stop running. Finally, Lisa raised her hand for silence. I think we've heard enough. Captains, it's time to vote. This decision affects all of us, but the responsibility falls on us 12. All those in favor of making formal contact with the Galactic Council and beginning the process of rejoining galactic civilization, raise your hand.
Daniel held his breath. Slowly, hands began to rise.
Lisa's hand went up first, then Captain Tanaka, then Captain Walsh. One by one, the captains voted until all 12 hands were raised. It's unanimous, Lisa said, her voice thick with emotion. Humanity accepts your offer. We're ready to come home. The assembly hall erupted in cheers and tears. People embraced each other, laughing and crying at the same time. Daniel felt Maya grab his hand, squeezing tight, and he realized he was crying too. Counselor Praxis's holographic form seemed to glow brighter. Then let us begin. Over the next year, we will work with you to survey potential worlds for human settlement. We will provide medical assistance to help you adapt to planetary life after generations in space. We will establish educational exchanges so your young people can learn about the galaxy, and so the galaxy can learn about you. This is a new beginning for humanity, and we are honored to be part of it. 6 months later, Daniel stood on the surface of a planet. Real ground beneath his feet, not metal decking. Real air in his lungs, not recycled through filters. Above him, a sky stretched in shades of blue he had only seen in old Earth videos. The planet was called New Terra, the first of 3 worlds designated for human settlement. Around him, thousands of humans from all 12 ships walked on soil for the first time in their lives. Children ran through grass, laughing with pure joy. Adults stood with tears streaming down their faces, overwhelmed by the simple act of standing under an open sky. Professor Velthar stood beside him, their crystalline form reflecting the sunlight into 1,000 rainbow patterns. "How does it feel, Daniel? To have changed the fate of your entire species?" Daniel knelt down and picked up a handful of soil, letting it run through his fingers. "I just asked a question in a classroom. I never imagined it would lead to this." "The best questions rarely come with predictable answers," Velthar said. "You asked, then what am I? And in answering, you reminded the galaxy that humanity never stopped existing. You just stopped being where we were looking." Daniel looked back at the landing site where shuttles continued to arrive, bringing more humans down from the 12 ships that now orbited above. 600,000 people, finally coming home to solid ground after 150 years of wandering. "What will you do now?" Velthar asked. Daniel smiled. "I'm going back to Kepler Prime to finish my xenobiology degree. And then I'm going to teach. I'm going to tell anyone who will listen about the 12 ships and the people who refused to give up hope even when the galaxy thought they were dead. Because that's what humans do. We survive. We endure. And when someone tells us we're extinct, we prove them wrong.